So King Charles just did something that's been brewing for years. He's essentially forcing Prince Andrew out of his massive Windsor mansion. 30 rooms, prime real estate, and Andrew's been clinging to it like his life depends on it. But here's the twist nobody's talking about. What happens to Sarah Ferguson? You know, Fergie, Andrew's ex-wife, who's been living there with him for years despite them being divorced since 1996? Buckle up, because this royal eviction drama reveals way more about power, money, and family dysfunction than you might think. King Charles has been trying to get Andrew out of Royal Lodge, this sprawling 30-room mansion in Windsor, for literally years now. He's cut off Andrew's allowance. He's stopped paying for his private security. He's basically done everything short of changing the locks. And Andrew? He's been digging in his heels, refusing to budge, insisting he has a lease that protects him until 2078. But apparently, Charles has finally had enough. Recent reports say Andrew is being forced to move, and not to just any property, but to Frogmore Cottage, the much smaller place Harry and Meghan got kicked out of. But here's the question everyone's asking. If Andrew goes, what happens to Fergie? They've been living together for years now, divorced but inseparable. Is she getting packed up too? Does she have a say? And what does this whole mess tell us about how the royals really handle family drama? First, let's talk about what we're actually dealing with here, because Royal Lodge isn't just some nice house. This is a 30-room mansion on the Windsor estate. We're talking massive grounds, historic architecture, the kind of place that costs millions to maintain. Andrew signed a 75-year lease on it back in 2003. Yes, a 75-year lease, agreeing to maintain and renovate the property. And here's where it gets messy. After Andrew's spectacular fall from grace, the Epstein scandal, the disastrous interview, losing his royal duties, people started asking a pretty reasonable question. Why does a disgraced royal who no longer works for the firm get to live in a palace-sized mansion? So the king tried the subtle approach first. He stopped paying Andrew's £3 million annual allowance from the Duchy of Lancaster. He cut funding for Andrew's private security, which reportedly costs £3 million a year. The message was clear. If you can't afford to maintain Royal Lodge yourself, you need to move somewhere smaller. Charles even offered Andrew a solution, Frogmore Cottage. Much smaller, only 5 bedrooms compared to 30 rooms, but still nice, still on Windsor grounds, still appropriate for a non-working royal. He reportedly found private funding somehow, though nobody's quite sure where that money's coming from, which is its own concerning question, and insisted he could afford to stay and meet his lease obligations. But now, it looks like Charles has finally pulled rank. The king's had enough, and Andrew is apparently being forced out. Now here's where this gets really interesting. Sarah Ferguson. Andrew and Fergie divorced back in 1996, right? But over the past several years, she's been living with him at Royal Lodge. They're not remarried. They're not officially together. But they're together. It's this weird, very British arrangement where they're close friends who happen to share a 30-room mansion. When the eviction drama started heating up, everyone naturally wondered, what about Fergie? And here's what makes this complicated. Fergie isn't technically a working royal. She never has been, really, especially after the divorce. She's built her own career, written books, done speaking engagements, created her own identity outside the firm. But she's also deeply connected to Andrew. When he was at his lowest, after the scandal, after he lost everything, she stood by him publicly. She defended him. She moved in with him. So if Andrew gets forced out, does Fergie just go with him? Does she have any choice in the matter? And more importantly, does she even want to leave? Because here's the thing. Royal Lodge isn't just Andrew's home. It's been Fergie's home too. Her base of operations. The place where she's rebuilt her life and her relationship with her daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie. But unlike Andrew, Fergie doesn't have a lease. She's there because Andrew's there. She's essentially a permanent house guest in royal property. So when Charles forces Andrew out, Fergie's fate is tied to his, whether she likes it or not. Charles has been king for over 2 years now. Why is he finally forcing this issue now? First, it's about optics. In the middle of a cost-of-living crisis in the UK, having a disgraced, non-working royal living in a 30-room mansion on prime real estate, it's not a good look. Charles is trying to slim down the monarchy, make it more efficient, more justifiable to taxpayers. Andrew hoarding a mansion he can barely afford undermines that entire message. It's personal. Reports suggest Charles is genuinely frustrated with Andrew. His brother's refusal to quietly downsize, his apparent ability to find mystery funding, his general resistance to accepting his new reality. It's all been an ongoing headache. Charles is done being patient. It's practical. Royal Lodge could actually be useful. There are working royals who could use the space. Prince William and Catherine have been mentioned as possible future residents. It's prime real estate that's being underutilized by someone who doesn't even represent the monarchy anymore. But here's what I think is really going on. Charles is establishing authority. He's showing that being king means making hard calls, even with family. He couldn't do this when the Queen was alive. She had a soft spot for Andrew, reportedly gave him the allowance, and supported him staying at Royal Lodge. But Charles doesn't have that same attachment. And he's making it clear, if you're not working for the firm, you don't get to live like you are. Now let's zoom out and talk about what this actually reveals. On one level, this is just real estate drama. Rich people fighting over who gets to live in which mansion. Hard to feel too sympathetic, right? But on another level, this is about power, control, and consequences. Andrew made catastrophic choices. His association with Epstein, his handling of the allegations, that interview. These weren't just PR mistakes. They were moral failures that brought serious damage to the monarchy. And yet, for years, he's been able to maintain a lifestyle that looks pretty comfortable from the outside. Living in a mansion, finding money somewhere, keeping up appearances. Charles forcing him out. As for Fergie, her situation highlights something uncomfortable. Even as a modern, independent woman who's built her own career, her housing situation is entirely dependent on her ex-husband's relationship with his brother the king. It's a reminder that no matter how much the royals talk about modernization and independence, the old power structures are still very much in place. Property, money, security, it all flows from the crown, and the crown can take it away. This isn't really about a house. It's about what kind of monarchy Charles wants to lead. He's been talking for years about a slimmed-down monarchy, fewer working royals, less public funding, more accountability. But talk is easy. This is actually doing it. By forcing Andrew out, Charles is making a statement. Scandal has consequences. Non-working royals don't get to live like working ones. Family loyalty doesn't mean immunity from accountability. And honestly, that's leadership. Is it harsh? Maybe. Is it complicated by the fact that Andrew is his brother? Absolutely. But sometimes leadership means making uncomfortable decisions for the good of the institution. The Fergie situation adds another layer, because it raises questions about women, independence, and power in royal circles. She's done nothing wrong. In fact, she's been remarkably loyal to Andrew when many would have distanced themselves. But her fate is entirely tied to decisions made by men about men. That's worth noting, even if there's no easy solution to it. Andrew is apparently on his way out of Royal Lodge, whether he likes it or not. Charles has finally exercised his authority as king and head of the family. The message has been sent. Fall from grace, and you fall all the way. Fergie? She'll presumably go wherever Andrew goes, because that's the reality of her situation. Whether that's fair, whether she's happy about it, whether she has any real choice. Those are questions we probably won't get answers to. But here's what I'll say. This whole saga reveals that the monarchy, for all its talk of tradition and continuity, is still ultimately about power. Who has it? Who doesn't? And what happens when you lose it? Andrew lost his power when he lost the Queen's protection and Charles's patience. And now he's losing his mansion. Fergie never really had institutional power to begin with. She has Andrew's loyalty and her daughter's love, but not a seat at the table where these decisions get made. And Charles? He's showing that being king means having the final word, even when it's messy, even when it's family. Whether you think that's admirable or ruthless probably depends on where you stand on the whole Andrew situation. But it's definitely consequential. That's it for today. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe. We go deeper than the headlines on royal family dynamics. Drop a comment. Do you think Charles is right to force Andrew out? And what should happen with Fergie?